seems like I'm doing all right.
Hello, mic check. Is that better? Technical issues? Right, okay, sweet. Let's do that again. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another developer live stream for Beyond the Wire. I'm Danny, and for anyone who doesn't know, Beyond the Wire is a World War I first-person shooter coming to Steam Early Access this year, and is actually available to wishlist right at this moment in time. So we recently did a live stream for Passchendaele, which was the first map we revealed for Beyond the Wire. So we thought we'd come on again and have a walk through Argonne. So we're back with Bruno, creative director, and we're joined today by Maurice. Maurice, how you doing, mate?
Oh, not too bad. Hello,
Good.
everyone. How you doing in the chat?
So first time meeting you, Maurice. Do you want to give us a quick introduction on yourself, buddy?
Sure. I'm a game designer. I've been making games for about 10 years. 5 of those years have been spent in various studios. Been all over the place. I've worked with neuroscientists to develop games that train emotional and cognitive intelligence. I've made like dress-up games for kids. Before I started at Offworld, I made a little interactive storybook for the Canadian Space Agency. Then I've worked on Squad, the CAF mod, and now I'm on Beyond the Wire. And I have a huge history of modding everything from Squad to Fallout 4 to Skyrim.
Awesome, thanks, mate. So great to have you on. As always, it's always great to have a new face to introduce to the community. So yeah, we're going to take a look at Argonne today. We released a dev blog earlier on, so if no one's checked that out, be sure to go and do that. But we're going to do a couple of questions, and so we'll kick off with Bruno. Bruno, just the usual, mate. What was the reasoning for bringing Argonne to Beyond the Wire?
First of all, hi everyone. With the Argonne, what we really wanted to do is we thought, it's the perfect level for representing the American Expeditionary Forces participation on the First World War. So the Musargon front. So this was like the final Allied assault of World War One. So we have all these armies moving to push back the German lines. And it's very interesting in the area of the Argonne specifically, where the Germans have been there for quite a long time. So you have troops and you have like trenches and very heavy defenses there that were built over, pretty like 3 years. They're like in there building these defenses. So it's all very heavily fortified. And that's why you're going to see on the Argonne a lot of bunkers. You're going to see a lot of concrete being used in trenches and even underground, right? So you're going to see like lots of areas where the German troops actually dug into the hills and created this like very, very heavy defenses in there. And we thought that's the perfect level to be featuring the American Expeditionary Force, because you're going to have these incredibly strong forces pushing into those incredibly strong defenses. So that's going to be very interesting for a game like Beyond the Wire to represent, right? So yeah, that was pretty much the main driving force behind choosing this level and choosing the way we represented Argonne on Beyond the Wire.
Perfect, thanks, mate. So, Maurice, at the start of developing Argonne, what were the main goals and design decisions for the environment?
So one of the main design decisions was that we wanted to approach trench warfare within a forest. The Argonne has been it's an area of forest that saw a lot of fighting near the final couple of years of the war. Mostly like the American Expeditionary Force as well as the French fighting in tandem to push the Germans as far east as possible. So one of the focuses of the level was to try to get a good example of forest combat within World War One. So we've got a bunch of like labyrinthian trenches that have been developed over the course of 3 years, and these are German trenches too, ones that were made made of poured concrete, a lot of underground bunkers. located on like undulating hills. An important thing to keep in mind about the Somme is that it's located close to like a mountainous area, so you get a lot of like undulating hills and steep inclines that we tried to explore.
Awesome, mate. So, were there any specific techniques or tools that we used for designing the map?
So for this map, we took a pretty standard approach to gray boxing it, where similar approach to what we learned in Passchendaele. But an important thing to note is that whereas Passchendaele is kind of like our benchmark level, it's where we test all of our new mechanics, all of our new gameplay, and like iterations on level design. Argonne was like started after we established level design conventions on Passchendaele, so it was a lot more informed. So we were able to like really explore and be experimental with creating level design that facilitates like really good melee combat as well as bolt action, methodical bolt action rifle gunplay. So in order to achieve this really quickly, we needed to create a lot of really like organic feeling mounds and like hills. So at first we sculpted like the base of the hill. We've got like a centralized like rolling hill in the center of the map, along with a smaller one off to the right. And then once we had the block out of the landscape, we then exported the height map and then brought it into Photoshop. And then through like using filters, specifically like the cloud render, we were able to take. So like a quick explanation, height maps are black and white, and they represent like um, how how steep a mountain could be. And so essentially what we did was we had these like smooth like plain looking hills, and then we brought that into Photoshop. We made sure to create a mask so that the inside of the trenches wouldn't be affected. Then we applied a cloud filter. That cloud filter then created a very organic and random feeling undulation throughout the hills. So we had a lot of really natural feeling inclines and declines. And then from there, we were able to take that height map information and then reapply it to various like paint layers so that we could get like any area where there's like a little crevice. We had that like texture information so that we didn't have to hand paint any details for like still water or like collections of leaves. Of course, we went through later and created or like fine-tuned and like improved it by hand, but it saved us a lot of time. An important thing to note is that like we started the level back in March, and then we tried to get like a first playable by the end of July. So throughout that time, thanks to a lot of like clever like Photoshop techniques and out of editor tricks, we were able to get a really good first pass on the level. And then of course like we learned like a lot of the new procedures that we were able to apply to our future levels.
Right, and we've got to our second phase of closed alpha happening this weekend, and that's going to be really the first chance we're going to get of testing Argonne on a large scale. So we're looking forward to seeing the feedback we get from everyone on that, and we are going to be doing a giveaway at the end for some closed alpha spots, so hopefully there's some lucky people in the chat. So Bruno, Maurice obviously mentioned there that Argonne has quite a lot of undulating hills, contrasted with that middle sector that's quite stark and bombed out. What are the environmental features and how do they affect the gameplay?
Yeah, so we really wanted to represent the forest of the Argonne in a very authentic manner on Beyond the Wire. So all those elements that Maurice just mentioned were very, very important, especially acquiring this height map data from the actual region and implementing that into the level. So what you see is pretty much how it really is in real life, which is very interesting. Of course, we do take creative liberty when it comes to like making that area even more interesting for gameplay. So it's really cool how like you can use real world data for that kind of stuff nowadays. So anyway, this means that you have lots of height variation across the map, and it gets to a point where, because you're inside this forest, there's lots of height variation. You start seeing how much the like having the higher ground is going to affect combat, right? And that becomes very visible in this map. So I think we can see that a little bit on the screenshots that you're showing there right now. That's really cool. So another very interesting element of this map is exactly that. The plane that's on screen right now, that's a Zeppelin Stocken, and this is like this incredibly like colossal airplane that crashed on the map just before the match started. So it's still on fire. There's still like, it's still smoking. And because this thing is so massive, it becomes like one of the major points of interest on the Argonne map. And actually, if you've never seen this plane before, I'd suggest going onto our blog and taking a look at it because it looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Our artist did a really great job at modeling that one. So yeah, all those elements put together, I believe it's going to make for a very, very interesting combat experience on the Argonne Forest.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, the Starkin is the centerpiece of the map, and it is. People are just going to want to fight over it, just because of the centerpiece that it is. So, Maurice, we mentioned how we wanted Argonne to be a different experience and be visually very, very different to Passchendaele. What are the main differences between the two maps?
So the main difference I would say is the main difference would be atmosphere, where since we have a lot of like inclines and declines throughout the level and a lot of like ridges that are fought over, there's often going to be a lot of situations where you're going to be making out silhouettes that are zipping across like the ridge line if they're not already in the trenches. It should also be noted that like this level, currently we're exploring a nighttime lighting as opposed to the daytime that's featured within Passchendaele. It's quite controversial whether first person shooters should go with like true night layers, given the fact that players can control gamma and then like give themselves an advantage over other players. But at the moment we're trying to like approach we're trying to take a very like artistic approach to this, where we have like an abstract lighting layer where we have a lot of like silhouettes that are, like I said earlier, we have a lot of silhouettes that are going across ridges. So, but of course you can't tell at a certain distance whether they're friend or foe. So we're hoping that that's going to facilitate a lot of like unique communication and gameplay that could only really be achieved on this level. Furthermore, the level itself is fundamentally different from Passchendaele, where Passchendaele it was part of the trench line that stretched all the way to the sea. There was direct combat where like dozens of meters were like fought over throughout the 4 years of combat, whereas the Argonne map, it's situated far behind those lines. So as most of you know, like around the end of the war, German supply lines were stretched too thin, and then the American expeditionary force was able to push dozens of miles back behind German lines. However, even back there were still fortified trenches that have been developed over 4 years. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of these trenches were made of poured concrete. That was one of the big differences between the Germans and the French, is that the Germans were a lot more cynical about understanding the realities of like modern war. They knew they were going to be there for a while, so they created a lot of entrenchments that were made to last. And those like entrenchments were developed and made denser over those 4 years. So some of the features of this map will include like underground bunkers where like close combat will be really vicious. In some of our like close playtests so far, we've experienced like really intense like fights where players were trying to go into capture points by throwing grenades and trying to smoke out the Germans as much as possible, and then cautiously going in one by one, clearing room by room, in an experience somewhat similar to like Rainbow Six, but with less like gimmicks. And I don't say that in a derisive way. I love Rainbow Six. Another thing that's important to note is that Passchendaele, that has very like trench lines that run in parallel. So you got your back lines, support lines, front lines, no man's land. And at one point, you do have to exit the trenches in order to take the center of the map and then invade the enemy's trenches. The Argonne, the trenches are more of a spider web that ring around the center of the map. So again, going back to the theme of like really entrenching a position, players are going to be able to go throughout the entire level. Players will be able to traverse the entire level through going through trenches. How this will be the longest route, but it'll of course be the safest. What else? Of course, it's in a forest, and there's a lot more elevation. So your line of sights are going to be a lot more condensed on Argonne than in Passchendaele.
Awesome. So we kicked off mentioning this was obviously quite a significant battle for the American Expeditionary Forces. Bruno, I wonder if you can answer if the American forces will be the only Allied force that we'll see on Argonne.
So that's a good question, actually. The American Expeditionary Force was definitely had like a very important presence on the battles that surrounded the Argonne Forest, but they were also supported by their allies, and our plan is to start featuring the AEF versus the German in this level, but we do have plans, and we trust our level and game designers to come up with very interesting scenarios in there. Of course, we want to explore everything that's possible, so and create very interesting combat with the other factions as well. So that's, I'll say it's remain to be seen, but we are really considering what kind of combat or what kind of factions we're going to be able to represent in this level. And I think it's going to be very interesting to actually be able to see that.
Yeah, for sure. It takes a little bit of artistic license in some places.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Right, so that was pretty much the questions that we'd prepared. We are going to do a bit of Q&A with the chat, so if anyone's got any questions, we'll go through those. I've noticed one that we can kick off with straight away, Maurice, if you can answer. How far are the Argonne trenches apart? I know we touched on it a little bit.
So the Argonne trenches, they're what's a good measurement? I guess they'd probably be like 3 to 5 meters apart usually. There isn't like a hard and fast rule. We've got like several rings. So we have several rings around the center of the map. If I recall correctly, there's about 2 or 3. Each one is spaced out about like 5 to 3 meters. And there's some other trench lines that are built around bunkers. So there is going to be a lot of situations where you may find out that there is a group of enemies by your neighboring trench, and then you'll be able to like throw grenades at them, or you'll have to watch out for people throwing grenades at you. So there will be a lot of like trench to trench combat, very close, and hopefully it'll also provide players with the ability to like retreat back into these trenches if they find that their current area is being overwhelmed.
Awesome. Another one, Bruno, that I know that we discussed in our little rehearsal, but I don't think we touched on. Night maps, will we have illumination flares?
So it's actually a very interesting feature of this map particularly, because we do have a flare illumination type of thing where you will see every once in a while. I'm not going to go into too much detail about how it's triggered or anything like that, but basically what it does is you will see this red flare coming up in the air and lighting up the entire map for a few seconds. And of course, that makes for a very cinematic, it's very immersive. It's honestly very beautiful type of imagery, just that. And on top of that, of course, there's all like the gameplay implications of that. So now you thought you were like hiding behind something, or like you thought you were hiding in the shadows, but suddenly this flare is illuminating you and revealing your position, or revealing the position of the enemy. So I think that's going to be very interesting and add this dynamic element of lighting to this level. So yes.
Confirmed. Flares confirmed for Argonne. Maurice, here's one for you. I know it's something that we have discussed previously, but it's a question in the chat. What factions will there be in the game for early access?
Currently, we're going to have the French, German, and American expeditionary force. I think I screwed that up, but you get the idea. So basically, we're going to have a strong focus on the Western forces with eventual. Well, we'll see what our eventual plans are. We'll release them as we confirm them. But at the moment, we plan to have 3 factions available on launch.
Awesome, thanks, mate. One from Lost Soul. Will there be artillery calling? Yes, there will be off-map artillery support as well as an artillery detachment as well. So there's 2 options there for artillery. Bruno, will there be vehicles?
There will be vehicles, but not necessarily player-controlled vehicles. We'll go more into this later on.
Awesome. Maurice, will hand-to-hand close-quarter weapons like clubs and knives be more viable than in Verdun?
I would say so. One of the things that we've been focusing on during our playtests is figuring out exactly what is the pace of our gunplay going to be, and how could we slow it down and use it to facilitate close combat weapons. So one of the big like breakthroughs we had was refining the speed at which bolt action rifles are rechambered. So we wanted to create a situation where if a player is within 10 feet of another player, the melee weapon would be the superior choice. And in order to do that, we modified the rate of fire of bolt action rifles so that you essentially have like one shot. If you don't make your shot, if you don't make the headshot within that 10 feet and someone's running at you with a melee club, chances are that they're going to have the advantage over you. However, this could be countered by having a bayonet attached to your rifle, but then you make the risk of missing your shot greater because greater sway is applied to your rifle when a bayonet's attached. So at the moment, we have a close combat system that is still quite rudimentary. But from the playtests we've seen so far, we found that like a lot of the most memorable moments in the game have resulted from players like using their clubs to defeat a player with a ranged weapon, or sneaking around a trench and then sneaking up on a group of players and then bonking them on the head, taking them out one by one. So at the moment, it's quite memorable at the very least. So I would say we still have a fair bit of ways to go with making sure that the game feel is as good as it could be for launch, but also exploring like a variety of melee weapons. So at the moment, we only have a trench club, and for a bit of variety, we have implemented a bayonet. Both are like the exact same mechanically, but we're going to be exploring like various other weapons such as knuckle dusters, perhaps a saber, and of course like finding a way to implement like the entrenching tool as a usable melee weapon.
Great, thanks, mate. I've seen flamethrowers ? We're trying. We're doing some testing on flamethrowers, so we'll see how that goes. Bruno, will there be any weapon modification systems?
Not at first, or it's not really. It's not currently planned as a feature. But we do have various types of different weapons that you can get access to by choosing different roles that you're going to be playing as. So I wouldn't say like a very like an actual system to customize weapons, but you can select like different roles that will have different weapons, and there's going to be a lot of exciting weapons in there. So yeah, keep tuned.
Awesome. So we'll finish on that one then. Thanks both of you for answering those questions. That was great, really insightful. I'm sure the community really appreciates it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I appreciate our community. This is my first time on Twitch, and the comments are quite wonderful.
We'll look forward to having you on again, mate. Right, let's fire up this giveaway then. So we're going to do 5